Hi, this is Tony Agnesi, and welcome to this edition of the Storytellers. This is episode number 8. We're in our third season. You can see the Storytellers on the Fiat Ministry Network and on Patchwork Heart Ministries. And the video program appears on my website at tonyagnesi.com and on my YouTube page, youtube.com/TonyAgnesi. The radio program airs with the stations on the Living Bread Radio Network. Each week on the program, we feature an inspirational guest and discuss not only their personal faith journey and the ministries they share as authors or speakers, bloggers, radio, television hosts, teachers, and so forth. And today is no exception. Charles Fraune is the author of 2 books, Slaying Dragons, What Exorcists See and What You Should Know, and Swords and Shadows, Navigating Youth Amidst the Wiles of Satan. Those books here, I'll give you a little shot of those books if I can do it without getting too much glare from the lighting here. And we're going to get into those books as we go. Charles has a master's degree in theology, master's in arts and theology, as well as advanced apostolic catechetical diploma. He's been a teacher for a long time, and he's been writing for over 20 years. And Charles, welcome to the program. Great to have you on the Storytellers.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Let's talk a little bit about your faith journey, kind of, and what brings us up to your writing these books. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in faith.
Sure. So I was brought up Catholic in a divided home. My mom was Presbyterian. She eventually converted when I was a senior in high school. And so the faith was a little bit weak. Both my parents were great parents, and people have remarked about that. They taught us a lot of good virtues and things, but the practice of the faith was not as strong as it really needed to be. And when I was a kid, my personal faith was not good at all. Like my brother, after my conversion, had a massive conversion when I was 20 or 21, coming out of a big depression. My brother told me later on that I used to hate going to Mass when I was in high school, middle school. And I remember trying to get out of Mass, never enjoying Mass. Only a few times, like when I was 8, when I was in 8th grade, a couple key moments I remember that something kind of clicked for me when it came to the spiritual life, when it came to how God's working. But my life was unfortunately oppressed from the age of 5 by teasing. And it's for big ears from the age of 5 all the way till junior in high school. And that really eventually became like what God allowed to define my life was this teasing and the way I reacted to it. Eventually I lost a lot of friends. I was slowly becoming a very anxious and depressed person. Internalized a lot, and that had a big impact. By the time I was a senior in high school, I developed a stress-induced eating disorder, or digestive disorder, I guess I should say, which caused me to almost drop out of high school. I barely finished high school, and most people didn't know how bad it was. I had to go on all these diets and things to figure out what was wrong with me, but I knew deep down inside that it was, though I didn't put it all together, I knew it was stress-induced, stress-related. That's what the doctors figured out as well. When I went to college, again, this whole time, I was going to a youth group at a Presbyterian community with a bunch of my friends. Only one of them was Presbyterian. He had Anglicans, Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, Presbyterian. It was good. I did not learn what I needed to know. I did not learn catechesis on morals, on who God really was. Some things were given to me which helped protect me from going too far with the depression. With depression comes suicidal thoughts, and I was not, those were not foreign to me during that time. From middle school all the way through the end of high school, really struggling with the depression and the anxiety. So certain things happened that I think were God's subtle actions securing me so that he could work on me later. So during college, I had this complete, self-implosion, self-destruction because of the anxiety and depression. Dropped out of college, cried myself to sleep literally for 3 months, 4 months. But in the middle of that, God was preparing me. I was basically despairing, crying out to God, barely sleeping at night, staying up all night, just writing poetry and drawing things, trying to figure out why I was so depressed and pushing God away. But at the same time, I was actively engaging him by pushing him away and by blaming everything on him. So at least I was talking to him. I didn't think it was going to be meritorious at all at that point. But then he started to interact. He gave me, just a long story short, gave me certain concrete signs that I could observe. And I always tell the kids, because I teach high school, that I was a hellbound pagan at this point. Irreligious, didn't know how to pray, didn't know who God was, didn't know what morals were, didn't know what sin was, haven't been to confession since my first confession. Couldn't tell you what a mortal sin was versus a venial sin, or even what a venial sin was. So I had no religious, life. And then God started to interact with me and trigger an interest. And as soon as I responded to it, again, I'm glossing over a really big story, but as soon as I responded to it, the floodgates of grace started to open. I went from being this, pagan kid who never prayed, didn't know anything about the faith, didn't really understand the Eucharist, priesthood, anything. I wanted to be a priest. All of a sudden, it was like 0 to 60, or from black to white. I didn't even know what a priest was, but I wanted to be a priest. And then I began the slow progression out of the anxiety and depression. It took a long time, but God began to do tremendous things. About a year after, so I came back to Mass. I had abandoned Mass after high school, didn't miss it, never felt an absence. Even consciously observed when I was in college, people going to Ash Wednesday Mass. And oh, right, it's Ash Wednesday. Whatever. It was a lot of kind of animosity towards the faith. But then one of the big things I did was I went back to Mass when I sensed that God was interacting with me. And I went back to Mass as somebody that was crippled by anxiety. My therapist referred to it as a crippling anxiety disorder with social anxiety. The last thing you want to do is go out in public. But I would go out in public once a week to go to Mass, even though I couldn't stand being there. I liked it in certain ways, but a lot of anxiety. So I responded, kept going for a year, very, very difficult year. Still extremely depressed, even though I was praying finally, somewhat. But a year later, God introduced me to St. Francis of Assisi, Mother Teresa. I heard the term divine providence for the first time. I was now actively discerning the priesthood with a group of guys who wanted to be priests as well. They got me back to confession, to daily Mass, to adoration, taught me what the Eucharist was. I didn't know these things. It was really, really funny how little I knew. But then more floodgates opened and my whole life changed. It was really pivoting around confession, which is, I didn't know then, this is 20 years ago, but that's one of the keys that exorcists teach when it comes to blocking the diabolical and opening up grace and really starting the healing process, which repels demons even further from you. It's all about confession. And that's when it started. God gave, one of the big things he gave me was this tremendous sense of peace. And I knew that Christ was the source of peace. He had revealed this to me, essentially, the prior summer. And then now this next year, about a year and a half after my conversion, he just dumped this grace on me that was an intoxicating, overwhelming peace that changed my whole way of thinking about life. And I really needed some serious help because of the depression and the anxiety. And he gave it to me. That's the thing. And it carried me toward the seminary. Eventually I discerned I was not called to the priesthood, and I left happier than I had ever been because I was finally understanding. And that was partly the healing from the depression and anxiety. God drew me to the priesthood, I think, because he could heal me more deeply by giving me all these priest friends, bishop friends, seminarian formation programs, which are so unique. Most people don't get the privilege of that. And then when I left, realizing I'm not called to be the priesthood, I was the happiest I'd ever been, even though I never expected to say no to the priesthood. And then,
but part of your discernment process was understanding that you had been drawn to this for a purpose, but that necessarily wasn't your vocation.
Correct. And then as soon as I said, yes, I will do whatever you want, Lord, I will let go of my attachment. I was really attached to the priesthood for a good reason. It's a powerful thing. As soon as I said, yes, I'll do whatever, all the doors started to open for my vocation. And more graces came, completing the healing from the depression. It was almost like it was done, 100% healing kind of arrived. And then I met who would be my future wife 4 months later without even looking. I got my first teaching job, finished my master's, got my high school job. Everything started to just fall into place. But it wasn't finished. I didn't realize, like 10 years ago when I got married, I didn't realize how much more our Lord wanted to do. And that's when these books emerged and this whole spiritual warfare journey that I entered in on. Now I really feel like, still like a baby Catholic. I have so much more to learn, absorb, and process and become. So he's still doing a ton of work.
Let's talk about the books a little bit. And first of all, when you start discussing things like spiritual warfare and exorcism, most Catholics have heard these words, but quite honestly, don't give it much thought and don't know much about them. What interested you in the whole concept of spiritual warfare and demon possession and talking about things like exorcism?
Yeah, I've thought about that quite a bit. And in the youth book, Swords and Shadows, I really, I wrote that when I was writing Slaying Dragons. Slaying Dragons is the big research project, the big deal that really changed my life in a lot of ways a couple of years ago when I was writing it. But it started really when at my conversion, because one of the graces that our Lord gave me was dreams. Lots of very vivid, prophetic dreams that it gave me graces that changed my life through the dream. It was really profound. But one of the dreams I had was a series of dreams, 5 dreams over a series of, like 3 years, 5 dreams. And they picked up where the last one left off. It was like a series of dreams. I've never heard of it, but it all involved the devil and his efforts of seducing me to his side. I still don't know if these were from our Lord revealing to me what the devil was up to, or if it was the devil actually trying to kind of break me back down, because it had the opposite effect. It was like teaching me, showing me what the devil was up to. But I didn't know completely what to make of it or what to do with it. This is, 20 years ago, 1 year after my conversion. But it set the stage, I think. It was the first seed of what he was going to teach me 20 years later, which was just 2 years ago. 2017 was when it all started. So my interest was really because when I was teaching and after I got married, being a former seminarian, I wanted to continue to make spiritual progress. I was doing all these research projects, working on all these books. Didn't finish any of those, and trying to have a good spiritual life, especially because I teach theology to high schoolers who really need a strong role model, a strong example, and someone who's full of grace as much as I could be. But I hit this point in 2017 where I felt like I was at a spiritual plateau, that I couldn't make any more progress. And I didn't understand it, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the idea that this was as holy as I could become. So I started talking to priests I knew, all of whom I didn't know were trained in spiritual warfare. Some that I've gotten to know, as a former seminarian, are exorcists. And I really started to understand that. And I wanted their advice. Like, what could you do, Father? I feel like I've got this baggage, a spiritual baggage from my miscreant youth and my depression and anxiety. And they said, well, there are some things you could do. Deliverance prayers, renunciations, binding prayers, all these things. I'm like, oh, that sounds very interesting. And there was a lot of fruit that could come from it. So some of them took me through like a 45-day journey, with a spiritual focus, and they started to teach me about exorcists, what exorcists could teach. And I didn't know exorcists were like publish their conferences, write books, and they're on all these videos and audios, a lot of stuff we could study. So I started to just continue this. I was in a process of a spiritual renewal, and I didn't know what it was going to do. I didn't know where it was going to go. I just felt like I had some baggage. I wasn't as holy as I wanted to be. And I didn't know what to do. So again, I'm saying yes, asking the church through these priests to help me. And they push me in the direction of these exorcists. And as I study things, I start hearing all these things that the demons can do, that fathers of families can do, the power of sacraments and sacramentals, what holy water, blessed salt, blessed candles, blessed oil, all these things can do. And I've never heard, I have a master's in theology, and I haven't heard half of this stuff ever. Along the way of being a seminarian, I talked to a lot of priests, and they would tell me stories about, possessions. Some would go to exorcism conferences and tell me some stories. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but I didn't know what to do with any of it. So something just clicked when I was doing this research. And I think the sense of baggage that I felt, the lack of spiritual progress I could make, was related to sins of my youth. I kind of didn't dabble in the occult, and that's too strong of a word, but I was curious, too curious, and kind of, played with a Ouija board, did some different things that kids do, but never really got deep in it. But just a couple times is dangerous enough. And with the depression and the anxiety, I really think I had some diabolical like tag-alongs, as I want to call it, just these nagging voices that would not go away. And as I studied the Exorcist teachings, I was diagnosing what was going on, and I realized that this was not normal. This could be preternatural. Not that I was possessed or anything, but the demons mess with all of us. And that if I start doing these things, renunciations, binding prayers, using holy water, blessed salt, blessed oil, blessed candles, all these things, there's power in those. I started studying what the blessings said in the old rite, what the actual blessings say. They're really strong. The church is really anti-Satan in all of her rituals. Like the church takes the diabolical seriously, but I didn't. Most people don't, because we don't know what it is or how demons work. But these exorcists can teach us the tactics of demons, what their motivation is, what their tricks are, how they try to wound you and then play on those wounds, and like be like a puppeteer if they can get you to play their game, but that you could stop the whole thing. So I learned how to stop the whole thing, and I started to do what the exorcists were saying. And again, like the floodgates opened, and it all pivoted around a confession. I went to confession one time with one of the priests who was mentoring me, and then God just, one day, I didn't do anything special, just went to confession, and he gave me this grace that showed me, it sounds too good to be true, but it was like he pulled back the veil, and I saw exactly what Satan's plan was against me, like the whole thing. And I knew from what I had learned and this grace, I knew what I was supposed to do to fight back. Binding prayer, renunciations, and just praying the way these exorcists had taught. And my spiritual life, this was a year and a half ago, my whole spiritual life changed, fundamentally.
We always depict, I remember the old cartoon, Charles, of, the devil on one shoulder and a guardian angel on the other shoulder, and the devil is whispering in this ear, and the guardian angel is whispering in this ear, and sometimes we make the right move, and occasionally we make the wrong move. How close to reality is that depiction?
Yeah, I guess it's pretty close. The only thing is we don't have a guardian demon. Like, we have a guardian angel. God, who's the creator, who makes all the rules, all the laws, he assigns us a guardian angel who is there by God's decree and will never leave. Will never want to leave because he's perfect. He's holy. And this priest who had been mentoring me, he said something very profound, which I've never forgotten, and I've woven into my books, and just is that everybody knows that God has a plan for you. But not everybody realizes that Satan has a plan for you too. Like, he has devised a tactic to tear you down, to take you down and damn you with him. So we have to figure out what that is. So there are, demons that kind of prowl around us. But the difference is that we can make them go away. With the power of Christ, the name of Jesus, the sacramentals and sacraments of the church, we can make them go away. And that's the big difference.
Are there certain people, Charles, that are more vulnerable than others? And if so, why is that?
Yeah. Well, speaking from experience, I think I was vulnerable to diabolical influences when I was a kid, because I felt like I had no friends. I did not turn to God for his help. I probably was not in a state of grace, and that makes you vulnerable. And I was depressed. So I think it was St. Francis de Sales talks about how the devil loves melancholy. He loves depression. He's essentially depressed, the devil. But he's viciously angry as a result of that depression. So people with exorcists teach that when we're wounded, it makes us vulnerable. And when we're not in a state of grace, like, those are the two big ones. If you're not in a state of grace, you are, kind of in the diabolical territory. There are two kingdoms on the earth: the kingdom of Satan, the kingdom of God. You're either in one or the other. There's no middle ground. If you're in a state of grace, you're in the kingdom of God. You're protected. Though if you're not smart, you could still be vulnerable, and the devil could trip you now in your state of sin. But if you dwell in a state of mortal sin, you do not have sanctifying grace, and you could become possessed. Most people don't, but you could be.
Those are stages, right? There are several stages that you can go through, and can people identify that they might be in certain stages? on their own?
Yeah, I would say so, because when I was doing all the research and started to apply the teachings, we don't want to self-diagnose without the church's counsel, but I really think I had some kind of diabolical obsession. A diabolical obsession is when they bombard your mind with something, with ideas, with images, with um, mottos, philosophies to try to crush you and draw you down into sin. I haven't heard an exorcist say what I'm about to say, but it makes sense that there will be degrees of diabolical obsession. Some that could drive you crazy and drive you to suicide, and some that could just burden you and keep you kind of like a robot, always doing the same sin over and over again because they've just got you on this loop. And I think that's where I was. They had me on this loop. They were messing with my mind and my thoughts so much that I didn't even notice. I didn't know it was happening. I thought it was just me, that I was just weak. And we are weak. And one of the things, I can't remember which exorcist it was, said it's very difficult to distinguish between our own thoughts and temptations, ideas that demons are putting into our mind. And so we should always kind of be on our guard that it could be part of a plot, a diabolical plot, these tempting thoughts, these indecent thoughts that we're having. So people with, I guess, another class, so to speak, of people that would be vulnerable is people who have habitual mortal sins, who are in a lifestyle of mortal sin. It's going to erode your prayer life, erode your ability to meditate, your ability to care if you're having evil thoughts. And then the demons can just move right in, and their plot is to slowly destroy your life, not to just hang around and cause you to sin constantly, but they want it to ramp up. They want it to go somewhere. And they can take it somewhere, because if you're not blocking their work, then they can work.
I guess from movies and so forth, The Exorcist and so forth, we see about devil possession, and I guess that would be the ultimate stage, possession. What are some of the things that just the average Christian, the average Catholic can do? I know you mentioned confession. What's the role of confession, and are there certain prayers and things that are going to be helpful to all of us? And what can are there some of those things in your books that we can gather?
Sure. So first, the role of confession is to restore you to a state of sanctifying grace. And that's the fortification where you are bound to Christ and he lives in you, he abides in you, and the demons fear you at that point. Like, they fear the saints. The saints interact in a lot of exorcisms and help drive away the demons, especially Our Lady and then St. Michael, the other angels. So a state of grace pushes them away because they don't want to go anywhere near you. So that's the big thing with confession. So prayers, the binding prayer is something that exorcists talk about, and renunciation. So the binding prayers is in the book. It's in one of the chapters. I don't think it's in the appendix. There's one prayer in the appendix of Slaying Dragons. Swords and Shadows has the binding prayer in the appendix as well. But it's a very simple concept. It's essentially, in the name of Jesus, I bind you, spirit of whatever is tempting you, and I cast you to the foot of the cross to receive your judgment, or to be judged. So the wording is not at the end, can be modified. But then renouncing, like if you have a strong desire, to say something cruel to someone because that's how you are habituated, you could say, you stop yourself. You could say, in the name of Jesus, I bind you, spirit of cruelty, spirit of hatred, and I cast you to the foot of the cross to receive your sentence. And I renounce all the times that I have embraced the spirit of cruelty and been cruel to other people. And then one of the things, when I had that grace I referred to a year and a half ago, is I wanted to add, and I choose to be obedient to Jesus Christ. So I felt this compulsion to renew my obedience, renew my commitment to him. So you will renounce Satan, you embrace Christ. You want to do both. And then, the rosary is super, super powerful. The devil can't stand the Blessed Virgin Mary. And so he runs away from her, and she can chase him down, and further bind him, further push him away. Our Lady of Sorrows, the chaplet of Our Lady of Sorrows is very powerful. Our Lady Undoer of Knots, she's a very powerful intercessor. So the Hail Mary just on its own. Mm-hmm. These are very powerful powerful prayers, but the binding prayer, renunciation, and confession, like those, that's the powerhouse. That's what happened to me a year and a half ago, where that grace entered, was through confession, renunciation, and binding prayers. And it helps heal you. That's one of the big things. It helps heal you of past wounds and sins.
Charles Fraune is my guest. The books are Slaying Dragons, What Exorcists See and What You Should Know, and then a book for young adults entitled Swords and Shadows, Navigating Youth Amidst the Wiles of Satan. Charles, how can they find the books, and where can they find out more about you and your ministry?
Sure. Yeah. Both books are currently on Amazon, and I have a website. So, Slaying Dragons, Swords and Shadows, you can find those on Amazon. I have a website too, called theslayingdragonsbook.com. So theslayingdragonsbook.com. That's where I write almost, 2 or 3 times a week, though now that school started, I had an extra long summer, kind of, because of the whole pandemic. We were home, since March. So I'm not writing as much now, but there are lots of articles that I have written in the past year. The book's been out for a year, Slaying Dragons, and I've written a lot of articles since then. So if you go there, subscribe, and you'll get an email notification every time I do write something. And I've explored lots of topics that I started addressing in the book, follow-ups. There are excerpts from the book. And one neat thing is, with Swords and Shadows, a lot of people really like that book, directed to youth, and it's actually going to be published. So all these books are self-published, but Swords and Shadows is going to be published by a Catholic publisher soon. So
excellent.
Yeah, the one hang up with that is that I'm going to have to pull it from Amazon temporarily while it's beefed up, published, and then it'll reappear sometime in the spring.
Well, we're out of time. Charles, thank you so much for being with us. And that's our show for today. My thanks to Charles Fraune, who has been with us. This has flown by. This has been a great half hour. The program premieres at 6 p.m. on Wednesday evenings. Be watching for it. It's episode number 8. The radio program is produced by the Living Bread Network and is available at the storytellersradio.com and later at the Catholic podcasting site Breadbox Media. Anywhere you get your podcasts, you can find it. Thanks again to Charles Fraune. This is Tony Agnesi. We'll see you again next week with another edition of the Storytellers. God bless you.